Hey everybody, welcome to the 1947 Operators Podcast. In order to increase the rate of technology innovation in India, we need to increase the number of operator angels in India. Hence, we are launching the 1947 Operators. 1947 Operators is a podcast that unpacks the investing journey of the best operator angels in India. We will be covering areas like what drove them into angel investing, what's their investing process like, how do they source deals, pick deals, and win deals, how do they evaluate founders and the market size, what value do they bring to the cap table. We're hoping the 1947 Operators podcast will help more operators start their angel investing journey. As a result, we will see an increase in the number of operator angels in the startup ecosystem. Well, it was a long time coming, and I'm glad that we finally made it happen today. We had Rohit MA on the podcast today. Rohit is the co founder and director of Cloudnine Group of Hospitals, India's leading maternity, women, and childcare service hospitals. Cloud9 has recently filed for the public listing. To expand his impact, he's starting a new journey with PeerCapital. PeerCapital is an early stage tech first multi sector venture capital fund. They invest in seed and Series A. In this episode, we cover topics like what drove him into angel investing, what was his first angel investment, who was the first believer in Cloud9 as an investor, the founding story of PeerCapital, thesis of PeerCapital, the learnings from investing, and the big misses he has had. Who is the outside of work, and more. All right, let's get going. Awesome. I am excited to have Rohit MA, the founder of Cloud9 and Peer Capital, with me on the 1947 Operators podcast. Rohit, welcome to the show.
Hey Shiva, thanks for having me, man.
Let's dive right into it, Rohit. What drove you into angel investing, and what was the first angel investment?
Well, it's actually it's quite a handful of a story, but yes, let me tell you that. I think the entire onus of investing, I think angel investing was a mechanism which eventually, kind of settled into. But I'll tell you the entire backstory, Shiva, was my own ability to raise sort of capital when I was trying to scale Cloud9. I'm talking of way back in 2010, post my graduation from B school. Came back, and as a family we decided that okay, let's try and build the entire prospect of Cloud9. We were just a single unit then. I found it exceptionally hard to have a meaningful conversation with, let's say, potential investors, and this was 2010. And I don't know what each one was doing in 2010, but it was a harsh world, right? I think
Mhm.
Flipkart had just announced its first institutional round. The entire globe was still dealing with the gift from the US in the form of subprime crisis. So, capital markets were what they were. In India, there was no state specificity or sector specificity how VCs or Ps used to operate. I think the opportunities were not as many as it was today. I think the entire ecosystem was still developing, right? So obviously, I think I chose a great time to kind of scale up in terms of not having anything at play.
Mhm.
But this was a great learning, right? So took about a year and a half to even have meaningful discussions, but finally ended up with a bunch of term sheets. But this 1.5 year of exercise had stuck with me to say that hey, I should do something about this and see how I can replicate what I've got in terms of learning, not just growing a company, but also in terms of why should conversations be so difficult, right? And how do
Yeah.
you build access and stuff? But again, in my naivety, I thought the world won't change. Obviously, the world is a better place. We have like amazing networks. A lot of us are accessible. Even the funds have become so much more active across mediums. So it is a different world. So obviously, that vision has changed. But I think that pivotal pin in my head, which actually spoke about I need to do something in that space, stuck with me. It
Mhm.
took much longer to be able to kind of put this all together. The first instance was in 2013, post the Sequoia investment in the company, that I got a little bit of time to set up an incubator in house. It was called ABC, or Accelerated by Cloudnine. Very simple product premise, simple tech stack. People would come and use their products, services to actually engage with a lot of our customer data, all anonymized, and no customer information going through, but with good outcomes, and validation coming through. I would kind of be the first customer to use such service with low or no fees. This was a simple premise, no equity, nothing, no hangups of that nature. But I saw that a lot of them started doing really well. And then the real investing started when very, very world famous Ashish Mohapatra of business, he was one of the main reasons why I chose Matrix over others in 2011. I know Avnish will hang me if he hears this, and Avnish, it was partly you as well, but you also know it was Ashish. But Ashish was the single most important reason as to why we chose Matrix over everybody else, right? And it was just a fantastic run. And in 2015, Ashish decided that he's going to move out of Matrix to start his entrepreneurial journey, right? So, and Ashish, I mean, he has a, between him and Ruchi, they have two unicorns, right? And it's obviously everybody knows about it at OFB and Oxyzo. So, when Ashish was starting up, for me, that was like a great time to like put some capital in, which I didn't have, right? So it honestly started more as a desperate sort of pooling of resources rather than a carefully thought out sort of procedure. So that's really how it happened. A bunch of us ganged up. We were able to put in a structure where we made it as a family fund, and very few participants, of course. And we were able to put our first check in with Ashish, who's done tremendously well for us. I can't even tell you the kind of multiple return that he's
It looks on your face, Rohit.
Sorry?
It looks on your face.
Yeah, he's set a very high benchmark for others to follow. Let me say that. So that was really, angel investing as such, in terms of purely as a desperate means, rather than, like I told you, like a thought out thesis, or how much time can I give, or what's the sector, and all of those things. It was just jump in. And that actually led to, I think it's a typical entrepreneurial journey. That actually led to saying that, okay, if we are able to pool a little bit of capital, how do we then kind of make meaningful sense of being able to work with other founders, and build some sort of relatability to say that, hey, I'm still learning and running a large business, but here's how I can help, right? So this was more, again, more out of, there was no outreach. It was all incoming, where a lot of founders in the network, and I think, again, privileged to have been building a strong company at a very great time for our country, where a lot of these things were happening simultaneously, right? So I think it was about being at the right place at the right time. Happened to meet a lot of great founders who, thankfully also took my check-in. Obviously, that wouldn't have meant too much from a capital point of view, but was able to like deploy that check-in. And again, thankfully, a lot of them have gone on to do really, really well. So this is really how the investing journey started.
Got it. And Rohit, it seems like it took you 1.5 years to get the conversation going and around 4 years to get the first believer in. Maybe you can talk about the first believer. If it's Ashish, would love for you to double click on it. And who are, few people early on that really helped move the needle for you?
In terms of folks who came in to invest into
Yes.
Cloudnine?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think so. I don't want to name names of who didn't actually cut the let's say mark in terms of capital plus what. And I
Yeah.
think it's an early company, and this is and hopefully we'll talk about what I'm doing right now a little later on. But I think this was something which was genuinely missing, right? I think capital beyond a point in time fails to add value, right? In the sense, it's a one-time infusion. Of course, capital is everything, but I think as founders, entrepreneurs, you need a little bit of extra sort of help, especially when, let's say, you're building the team, you're building the vision, you're building the prospect. you need to put a lot of foundation in place. And I think this is where great investors stand apart from any other investor who has capital, right? And I've been a great benefactor of this. I can tell you two guys who I really kind of admire and hold them in high regard, which is Matrix and now Ritesh at Stellaris. Back then, Helion was my first term sheet, and Ritesh obviously led it. So we're great friends. Like I told you, I chose Matrix over everybody else. But I think Ritesh is again someone who just goes out of your way to kind of make sure that things are as the theme, and to give you that sort of a comfort, right? So I think amongst all of the guys who I interacted with then, I think I would hold them in very high regard. I've of course got the huge opportunity to work with the Sequoia family very, very early on, and it's been a developing journey over multiple years now. And Sequoia just continues to surprise you in the way they are able to operate and do stuff.
Mhm.
Uh, but I think Sequoia is an army, man, right? So if you're part of the Sequoia family, you
Yeah.
have an army at your disposal, right? So that just means a whole lot of things as well. So I think again, it's just been crazy good for me to have like some of the best guys who I think I've also been able to bring in at the right time, who've been able to help you kind of leap to the next step, right? And like I said, as a growing business, you kind of need to have some shoulders to also kind of lean on when things don't go your way. And as a founder,
Mhm.
a lot of things don't go your way, be it internal or external. So I think it makes a lot of sense to have that. And anyone who's able to kind of build that relatability and say beyond capital is where they're able to add value, and they have founders like me vouching for what they actually did, I think that can be the best testimony for most guys, right? And that's been a great privilege.
Yeah. As a founder, you said there's more to there's something beyond the capital, which you've been through it, and and it seems like through your own experience, now you're on to your next journey. You've built a company which is Cloud9, and it will be soon going public. You've seen the entire journey, and moving forward, as I can get a sense, like your thesis has been around a problem that you have faced while building the company, and you want to go and solve that, and that you're looking to solve through peer capital. Would love for you, Rohit, to expand on the founding story of peer capital and the thesis going forward.
Yep. No, it's been a huge mind transition for me from being an operator to now getting in the investing side of things, right? So there is this huge urge to make a difference, but the structure won't allow you to kind of go berserk from day one. I
Yeah.
think it's a slow journey and learning the ropes, and outside in, I would have thought that it's a very cutthroat sort of industry where people are just very hush hush about everything and they don't tell you. But I've been amazed at the collaborative nature. It's probably again the goodwill that me and the other partners have probably brought in, but I don't know if it's the same for everybody. But again, thankful to the entire industry for being such a wonderful collaborative sort of ecosystem where simple things in terms of understanding the paperwork to whatnot. We've just got some amazing experienced heads talking to us unconditionally, and all of those things. So it's just been awesome. So passing this on, I think, is very, very important, right? And of course, in deal making, I guess everyone becomes a little bit more guarded, but I think in everything else they're super open.
Yeah.
And I think this was something that for me, in terms of what we're now doing at Peer Capital as well, was to kind of bring that founder advantage to early stage investing, right? Now I'm building this with two other partners. My partners are Ankur Pava, who comes from a great experience from EY. He's led diligence, he's led the internet practice, he's led the ecom practice, worked with over 70% of the unicorn founders across the country. He's a guy who's completely top down. He can see and understand companies from early stage all the way up to late stage, as he's worked with a lot of them. So that sort of a risk and growth advisory was something we felt that we should try and bring in.
Mhm.
We've all known each other for the last decade or more, done a lot of things together. So we just felt from a timing perspective that it's great to do this. My other partner is Karthik Prabhakar from, he used to be with Chirate, one of the fastest sort of growth in terms of VC industry, where he started as an analyst and exited as a managing director. Great at fundraising, deployment, has amazing founder love in terms
Mhm.
of all the investments that he's made. So couldn't have asked for a better team to come together and do this. So in a mixed form of view, we are, I'm the operator entrepreneur, Ankur is the growth and risk advisory, Karthik is the VC expert. So we just feel
Mhm.
that, this as a triad of combination, that it's really useful for us to kind of bring in at an early stage investing. Now,
Yeah.
why early stage? And, what we felt was also something that we can add on. Now, if you look at the entire ecosystem, there's probably about 950 odd funds in the country, which operate today in various forms and fashion, right? Again, sector specific, state specific, and whatnot. And if you take away the filter of just capital, I think some of these sort of ethos to say that, the relevance in terms of what you were doing as of today, over the last few years, you've seen the various things that our country has gone through from, let's say, two probably strong economic downturns globally in 2008 and then 2016-17, and of course the pandemic, right? I think all of us have gone through this to kind of build that sort of relevance in terms of saying, hey, beyond capital, how do you kind of bring in the notion of resilience, right? How do you
Mhm.
bring in the notion of empathy? How do you bring in culture as a significant part of what we do?
Yeah.
It's not spoken about enough. But I think if you look at what happened during the pandemic, companies which on a normal course, Shiva, where a lot of them wouldn't have survived, hustled during COVID and became winners, right? So it's
Mhm.
about the kind of, culture you build, the transparency you build, the hustle you build, and all of that. And none of them have to do with just capital, right?
Mhm.
So it's about trying to build this relatability to say that, hey, we've all gone through this in so many means and forms, right? As founders, operators ourselves, how do we build this as an ecosystem at an early stage? I've seen this really offer at slightly later stages in the terms of growth and more P and all of those things. They have a lot of this sort of combination going that's available at the disposal of the founder.
Yeah.
But I think in early stage this was really missing. So we
Mhm.
love to participate in the seed to series A kind of bracket. We're going to be sector agnostic in the sense we'll focus on four key sectors, which is going to be healthcare, fintech, SaaS, and consumer tech. It's
Mhm.
going to be a tech first fund. It's a 600 crore fund.
Mhm.
We just got started in terms of the fundraising, and again, privileged to have like tremendous access where we've been able to build great network with amazing founders. We work with the likes of you to kind of help us validate, understand opportunities and whatnot. I think this sort of a collaborative ecosystem is what we were trying to build at a very early stage sort of symposium. And the first identification for all of us was to say that, hey, we're all peers first, friends next, and probably investors last, right? So we just
Mhm.
said that that's probably what our ethos is, and hence, the peer capital just resounded very well for us. So we said, let's just go with that, right? So it was as simple as that.
Love it, Rohit. And we'll talk about your investing process. What has been previously, now moving forward. I think previously you yourself were very busy, running your own company, and typically you used to have, let's say, an hour, 2 hour to evaluate founders. And of course, moving forward, you are institutionalizing your investing, and it'll be a little different game there. But how do you evaluate founders?
Well, you're right. I mean, I think two things have changed, right? Well, one is you're absolutely right. I think institutionalizing the investing process is a little bit more. Let's say it's a, at least for me, it's a learning process with both Ankur and Karthik. They've just notched on really well. But I think this in itself is such a journey that it'll automatically make you better, right? For
Mhm.
me, earlier it was just about the founder-led conviction to say that um, can I see that fire in this person's eyes, right? Him or her, that do they have what it takes to kind of get it done, right? Most of the times, the kind of stage that we are looking at, Shiva, data means nothing in terms of at least the data they put across, because these are all pre-revenue or slightly getting into a beta sort of stage, or a little bit of PMF. So everything that they actually talk about is a blue sky, right? Now, who am I to judge how this founder will actually create that category, right? It's for me to back their ability to kind of create those things, right? Now, and I keep going back to my own notion to say that, hey, if why would someone take a bet on me, right? In the space that we've built the entire company on, it's not like we figured out a way to help women deliver. It's been happening for ages, right? So
Yeah.
it's just about the perspective to say that there can still be a large market created out of this, right? So I think that in itself, to say that, okay, given that as a family fund, what I was investing in terms of the check size, to what it would mean, to also in terms of the impact that it would create for the founder, I think the risk taking ability was a lot higher in terms of saying that, okay, I like three things out of what the founders telling me out of five, and I'm going for it, right? Now, as we institutionalize this just becomes the base.
Yeah.
It's still a must have,
Yeah.
but it also needs to come with the vision to say that, okay, now I have to think about what's the sort of percentage that I need to kind of build in to show that, okay, if this does do well across a specific timeline, what
Hmm.
do I have to do in terms of understanding between now to, let's say, future rounds of capital from a dilution perspective, to figure out to say that, hey, will this be a great return for the fund,
Hmm.
right? So this economical sort of calibration is new to me, right?
Yeah.
And this is taking a bit longer to kind of, so when you do that, then you go into the depth of the market, depth of the ability to kind of bring a team together. You go into avenues such as is this space exciting enough to have the attractiveness for future rounds of capital? Where is exit going to come by? What form of exits do you look at, right? So there's at least four or five different steps that you now start looking at, right, beyond just the founder led conviction, to say that, hey, is this something that we can obviously look at? The second most important angle is also to say that, do we have enough of a connection with the founder where they also want to leverage us as much as we want to be able to kind of build value as an ecosystem there, right? So
Mhm.
this is something that, as I told you, we want to be peers to them. We want to be able to have us be the shoulder that they can lean on
Yeah.
in terms of saying that I know these guys can get anything done for me. So far we've been able to do it, that if it is a compliance related query, if it is a capital discussion, it's about putting the deck together, it's about having the right sort of understanding to say that a new investment opportunities come about, how do we go about it, preparing for diligence. There's just so many, and it's hard to think that every founder, big or small, comes with the understanding of how do you do this. You really don't, and it's an unfair expectation also on the founders, right? Like, again, I've gone through this entire thing. Again, very privileged to have brought a great team together where a lot of heavy lifting happens. This is what is missing, Shiva, right? As you keep
Yeah.
growing, are you going to focus on the business, or are you going to keep your investors happy by just being available to discuss time and time again, right? It's a blend, it's a mix. There is no formula to say 60 of this, 40 of this. It doesn't work that way, right? So I think you have to be able to give founders that sort of an insight to say that at this stage, this is how you need to kind of bring in the right sort of people. How much of it can be externally supported, how much of it can be internally brought in, right? Simple discussions like that also takes a lot of time, right? So we're just trying to see how good we can make a connect as well, to say that we'll try and build beyond just capital, as I keep saying.
Mhm. Rohit, I think you're a part of a shift that's going to happen, which is a lot of founders, operators starting or getting into VC world, backing other founders. And again, like as I said, you're leading by an example. You could be, either one or the first or very few people out there. If let's say an operator angel wants to take down the road a path that you have taken, what advice would you give an operator angel to get started into angel investing, which is how to get access to deal flow, how to win deals, how to close deals, how to help founders, uh, and yeah, kind of like just touch upon these things and how the question is, how can someone follow the footsteps of Rohit MA in few years?
Um, yeah, I mean, this can be a long answer. I'll try and keep it concise. Look, I think everyone needs to understand that it's not as sexy as it seems from the outside, right? Everyone wants to do this in some form or capacity. It is difficult. I think you have to build that sort of conviction in this asset class in itself as something that you would want to, kind of park, let's say, a significant part of your capital towards, right? So one is the impact, Shiva, in terms of working with great founders and whatnot. But you still need to also have an economic incentive to say that am I putting in the right sort of time, money, energy to
Hmm.
for it to yield a result,
Yeah.
right? So today there are like amazing asset classes available. India is obviously a great country in terms of multiple asset classes for good yielding results. So if this has to be like an outlier, given that you are spending your own time, I think you have to be very, very sure of the asset class. Two, I think today there are great ecosystems for someone who wants to get into this sort of an ecosystem to kind of start building towards, right? From, let's say, platforms like AngelList, Let's Venture, to small micro funds where you can work with the founders of such funds to actually be able to become an operating partner to say that, hey, again, beyond capital, is there something I can do and, learn alongside, share my learnings and whatnot. But I think a lot of people usually miss this out that more than capital, Shiva, it's the time that you're investing.
Yeah.
Right? I think that is what was a huge learning for me as well. That and this is a transition, right? That you can only take another person's capital to invest only when you are being diligent about your time. And I never did this when I was running the company because I think it's unfair on the current company's founders, the current company's investors, shareholders to be using your time to do something else. And which is why for me it was a transition to kind of do this full time and do less of what I was doing at Cloud9.
Hmm.
But I think for a lot of people, you have to understand that time is the most critical, right? Why is a founder taking a very measly sort of capital infusion from you? Because that's not what they value. What they value is your time.
Yeah.
This is a calibration a lot of founders today actually miss out on. It just becomes a little bit of a fancy sort of thing to say, hey, I've invested in them. But what does that do or what does that mean, right?
Yeah.
I think working towards a logical next step, and again, don't get me wrong, that I think there's nothing wrong with that, right? To do this. But since your question was to say that if someone wants to follow like what I am doing, then I think you should have a path to kind of saying that at what stage will I do this? I know
Hmm.
some amazing friends who've also been able to bring in pooling vehicles and do this diligently, knowing that in the next 7, 10 years they will actually take this path, right? Then they
Yeah.
have a track record, they have a history and whatnot. So I think this is a great sort of thing in the ecosystem. It can only go better. And offline, you and I were speaking to say that if you look at developed markets like let's say in the US and such, you will see a lot of them have come and the ability to kind of push the envelope in terms of thinking, specificity, the ability to kind of bring or rub off that hustle
Yeah.
into the founder and all that. Right? It's just amazing, right? And I think India will only do well to like leapfrog from where they are, right? We have some amazing founder angels today who have this, innate ability to kind of know that founder even when they're thinking about starting up, right? It's just amazing. I think from startup to more importantly, how do you help them scale up, right?
Yeah.
I think that is the difference. And again, if you see developed ecosystem, while startup is an easy word to kind of relate with, I think scale up is the most important aspect, right? As to how do you guys add value in this whole scale up proposition rather than just starting up, right? So I think this will be the most important thing, that if you can work towards the logical means to say that this is what I want to be able to do,
Yeah.
then you learn the ropes by angel investing, learn the ropes by working with others, learn the ropes by having a clear pathway. And maybe whenever you can, and this is not being done enough, for people to come and educate what are the various means of pooling vehicles, what are the various means of, let's say, you want to start a fund in 5 years, what is the current situation today, what's the sort of licensing regime,
Mm.
how do you go about it? Like for me, it took a year, right? I didn't know. I thought, okay, let's go apply it probably in 3 months, and it took a year. So, these are all things that you wake up to, right? Not
Yeah.
enough things have been told out there. While you hear in one odd sort of conversation, there is no concentrated plan to say that, here's what it is. There are a few discussions happening. We've seeded a few thoughts with a few people to say that a few media companies to say that, hey, can we go and talk about what it means for someone to do this sort of a journey? And this may come next year, couple of years, whatever. But I think we have to institutionalize this behavior, honestly, right? I think it will just do immensely well for the ecosystem.
Yeah, no, in fact, I was just going to say this. You can teach a master class now, even in the formation of the fund and the entire process.
Believe me.
And Rohit, would love for you to, maybe talk us about few of your investments, the story behind those investments, and we'll also talk about few of the misses and what did you end up learning from those misses.
Yeah, sure. I think across the entire investing journey, right? I think again, a lot of the winners have all been towards where more than the idea that they're working on, it's always been about the kind of founder hustle that you kind of believe in, right? So it's
Yeah.
always been like that. Again, learned it through the hard way, and maybe let's talk about the anti-portfolio first. Companies like Dunzo, right? I think saw very, very early on, was introduced by a very good founder from the network. Um, just didn't believe that India is ready for it or whatnot.
Yeah.
Costly miss.
Yeah.
Um, Aether, costly miss. Bounce, costly miss. Right? Again, if you look at it, it's not about of course, there is innovation deep rooted in these companies that they've built. But if you look at it, it's always been the founder and the founding group, right? In terms of how they've maneuvered across, the various things that the economic cycle throws up, on capital being abundantly available to, the customers vanishing during pandemic to whatnot, right? That innate ability, I think, is the burning desire to be able to kind of work towards, and this just helps you become smarter and smarter. So in the current portfolio, we have some amazing guys and girls who are actually building it. One of them is a company in the home furnishing space who's starting up, Garima of Vari.
Yeah.
She's gonna be a she's going to be quite a force to reckon with
Yeah.
in this space. I think for far too long, nothing much has happened in terms of platform play in this and all of that. Very under the radar, completely execution focused.
Yeah.
Clarity of thought is just next level.
Mhm.
She's building up. There's some exciting, and we were the lead about 4 months back. There will be an announcement very, very soon. A very large tier A firm now coming in and leading a quite a good check, which will help them then leapfrog again. There are 2x sort of operators, founders with Ranjit, who's building out Flash. Ranjit was at ex
Yeah.
Flipkart. He ran the BNPL space from, let's say, 0 to 200 crores per quarter. Understands the entire nuance of how do you go about looking at lending in terms of what the ecosystem within offers, and how do you make this better for a consumer. So they're not into the lending, but because he had that nuance, wanted to try and say that how do I improve the shopping experience, right? And again, it's a little bit based on a global model which already is there, but again, great founder fit in terms the idea to the actual premise that they're building. They're in beta, so they're going to get launched very, very soon. There is Ram and Abhi who are building Fold Health. Brilliant guys. The entire team sits out of Pune, while these guys are global citizens, and they're, the premise is to kind of build this for the developed markets in healthcare, which is in the US and Europe.
Mhm.
These guys are two ex-founders again. The first company got bought by Athena Health. They work very closely with Athena to kind of understand the ecosystem. They are active angel investors where now they don't have time. So these guys decided to start up again. Highly contested early rounds with very limited access, given the kind of guys that they are.
Yeah.
Doing some amazing things, right? So health tech has been a great sort of hunting ground as well. There's Vikalp of Eka. Vikalp was ex IBIBO founder, and IBIBO is obviously legendary in terms of output, outcome, all of
Mhm.
those things as shareholder, the product premise, and everything. Vikalp just decided, I want to take a crack at healthcare. And this was at the time of COVID with a lot of digital tailwinds and whatnot in terms of adoptions and such. So, he's again done an amazing job. A lot of good capital has come his way. Rockstar founder. If you think about it, there is no reason why he has to be successful because he doesn't understand it much in terms, the healthcare sort of vertical. But given that he's done it as an outside in, grounds up, you will actually see that the understanding is next level, right?
Yeah.
He's not biased about things which have not worked and all of those things. The ability to kind of take a punt and actually take a crack at it from a technologist point of view is just insane, right? So some
Yeah.
of these guys I think will just go on to do really, really well, right? So fairly well excited about how things are happening. And we haven't launched our fund publicly yet. I think
Yeah.
once we launch that, we'll obviously be doing a lot of founder stories. What do they think? Why are they doing what they are doing and whatnot? Because I think again, while there is a lot of information available, I think it still won't be enough. You need to hear a lot of good founders talking about what are they doing and all of that. And believe me, while I was in the US, and Shiva, again, I think we spoke offline, is a failed entrepreneur is probably much deeper in terms of their understanding nuance and everything compared to, let's say, a founder who's seen a little bit of success, right? So I think that sort of a thing, we don't talk about failures as much in our ecosystem, right? Failure is just a taboo in our country. I don't know why. uh, I think that also needs to be carefully calibrated to say that, in failure, what do you learn, right? It's not about, we're not talking about failure due to fraud or something, right? Because
Mhm.
that there is no excuse, but failure due to a genuine attempt of creating something. It may have been, not about the, it probably didn't have the right place, right time, but whatever else it may be, the learnings that you uncovered during that, right, they also qualify as, when the next time they start up, they also qualify as a 2x founder, right? So what is it that you are building towards from that understanding that you had before and all that, right? So there is a lot that can be done, and I think all of us together, I think we should be doing a lot more to kind of institutionalize this sort of thinking, and saying how do we build bigger, better companies, and
Yeah.
that's really where the outcome eventually lies.
Love it. Rohit, will switch gears here. What's something that you know now you wish you had known it earlier?
There's a lot of things in what.
It could be professional, personal, investing, or anything you've been recently talking about
Oh,
or
that's
recently thinking about.
very important question, Shiva. So I think for me, again, sharing my learning, I think everybody will tell you this, but I think when you do it, you will understand the importance of it is to build the right team. This can be across, let's say, my partner ecosystem, my team at Cloudnine, to the kind of investors you bring on board and everything, right? It's just really, really important to put in that time, energy to kind of understand how do you bring this team across.
Mhm.
As founders, it's very difficult that you actually don't get that, let's say, perspective beyond just yourself, and which is why it becomes important to do this exercise by oneself, to identify weakness more than the strengths that you bring in, right? And nobody will tell you this, right? Everybody wants to say that ha tu to kar lega and you will get
Mhm.
it done. But I
Mhm.
think it's important to kind of sit back and say that, hey, okay, here's where I feel I need a little bit of support, right? So
Yeah.
unless you do that, bringing in someone who will be able to complement you from what you have to offer and help you kind of scale faster, better,
Mhm.
I think is the single most important thing that I would say that everyone needs to put time into,
Yeah.
because it just amplifies, yeah, just the overall smartness goes up, overall ability to kind of lean on each other goes up. It's
Yeah.
just and it's time tested, right? But this is, if I could have done it a bit earlier, like you asked, I would have probably done it. But
Yeah.
then I don't know if you can time it as much better as you one can do, right? But what I've learned is to say that to do this exercise constantly, right?
Mhm.
Most of the team building honestly happens as a little bit of an outcome to something rather than it being a forethought plan to execution, right?
Mhm.
So as much as it is about building the right sort of product experience, you also have to figure out, and especially when we all talk about capital infusion, we
Yeah.
talk about saying what's the sort of team build that is actually going to happen, right? A lot of founders say it's okay, I can get it done. And there is no disrespect to say that why he or she cannot get it done, but it's also about saying you have to invest in the right people at the right time, because a lot of these issues without knowing can actually become pretty big. And to bring in someone at that time to kind of help overcome is a little bit of expectation mismatch on anybody you want to bring in as well, right?
Yeah.
So it's about timing a lot of these things. So my advice would be, and again, if I could do it, would to bring in like a lot of big better people up ahead and invest in them as much as yourself.
Yeah. Rohit, my co-pilot, I don't know if you got a chance to chat with him. His name is Alfonso in the back. He's been bugging me. So he gets to ask one question every part.
Okay.
So his question is, he's asking, who is this guy? We know him because of Cloudnine, an operator investor, now is founding Peer Capital. But who is he outside of work? What do his friends know him for?
I am the quiet guy in the corner who goes missed every time.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm like the most antisocial sort of specimen. I'm a workaholic, right? So, not a proud sort of thing to have, but it's somehow I don't know. It's probably the way that I've been brought up or something. It's just shut up and do your work, right? So I have always been something of that nature. So I won't be the life of the party. I'll actually be the drag of the party. um, but obviously, with I think the kind of things that one is now set out to do, you have to let some of these inhibitions go. So I'm kind of helping me develop into a more social person, let's say. But that's who I am. I'm this shy introvert. You have to wake me up at parties, and that sort of a guy. Just no nonsense, go build, and काम का मतलब, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. And,
I'm a father to a 11 and a half year old. Get to learn a lot of things through his eyes. The curiosity is just insane. I don't think we all had the privilege to go and speak to our parents in as much color, or let's say no application of filter to ask these questions, but it's fun. I think the generation today, so much of information around them. There is, if we all believe we were in a rat race, these guys are in a, I don't know what to call it as well, right? There's just so much information, so much amplification, so much of everything. And to still be able to kind of, make your own sort of sense towards some of these things, it's great to unlearn and, look through some of these things. So you're kind of enjoying that as well. So that's really who I am.
man, I don't get that feeling or sense at all. Whenever I'm around you, we are chatting, I feel just so comfortable. I'm like, this is, and you seem like an opposite guy actually to me.
Well, then I've done a good job, I guess.
Yeah, you just don't know about it. But Rohit, I had so much fun chatting with you, having you on the pod, and thank you so much for really, walking us through your experiences and investing journey and the impact that you're looking to create through peer capital, in the decades to come. Thanks a lot,
Yeah.
Rohit.
Yeah, no, awesome. Thanks for having me, Shiva. Always, like I said, you're such an easy guy to speak to as well. And I know I did most of the talking, but in all our conversations, there's so much of things that we speak about. And this is what everybody needs: a lot more conversations, open thinking. Not having the willingness to kind of say that okay, to fail a little bit, to learn from there, and all of that. I think we all need to become a little bit more open about it. Hopefully we'll try and change a little bit of these inhibitions, and try and make a deep meaningful impact for years to come.
Yeah.
And thanks again, Shiva.
And before closing it out, I had this thought going on in my mind while I was, talking to you right now. You are very candid when you're talking, really, really candid. Like whatever comes to your mind, you're just talking, you're flowing. And it goes back to what you just said, right? Like having a deeper conversation or vulnerable conversation where it's okay to, fail and talk about failures and all that stuff.